Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Carroll, and I'm one of the presenters for today. I just wanted to start off by situating ourselves with a land acknowledgement. This one is going to be a little interactive, so I'd like to share first and foremost that I'm from Nipissing University and that Nipissing University sits on the traditional territory of Nipissing First Nation in the territory of the Anishinaabe within the lands protected by the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. So I'm very grateful to be able to live and learn on these lands with my relations. And I would encourage you to just take a moment, if you're not familiar with the land that you are on, to look that up, nativelands.ca, but also if you don't mind just chiming in the chat where you're joining us from today, so we can get a sense of place and where everyone is. All right, and I'll hand it over to you, Jen.
All right, so this is what we're going to cover over the next 2 weeks. So we are entering a new module. So this is our module 2, and this is the first week of the module 2. We'll start with a check-in, see how you're doing. We're going to introduce the team and then go over the brief review of the readings in the podcast that we sent you this week. Then we'll spend a little bit more time this week in our breakout rooms. We hope to give you about half an hour to look at the topics and to follow the what so what structure. And then we'll come back together and review. Myself and Heather are hosting this week, but next week for week 2 of module 2, we're going to pass it over to our colleagues. So we won't have the same hosts over these 2 weeks. And then they'll talk about the breakout new perspectives and look at the now what. So thank you so much for joining us for module 2 of the Humanizing Learning Project. Just a little bit of an overview. This is a virtual learning strategy, or a VLS digital fluency project, and it's funded by the Ministry of Colleges and Universities and supported by eCampus Ontario. We're a collaborative team of experienced practitioners from 7 institutions, and our goal is to co-create with you a toolkit of resources to support humanizing learning. These discussions are one part of our co-design stages, and we're excited to work with you on our second module. So our module team consists of myself from Mohawk College and Heather from Nipissing University. And we're pleased to have also worked on this portion with Nick from the University of Windsor, Pat from Nipissing University, and Fiona from the University of Toronto, Mississauga. As I mentioned earlier, Nick, Pat, and Fiona will be your presenters next week. I also wanted to give a shout out to our Humanizing Learning colleague and unofficial module 2 teammate, Terry Green, for hosting our podcast this week on his show, Getting Air. So if you hadn't had a chance to listen to it, please check it out. You can check out all of Terry's interviews at this link I'm going to put in the chat. Oh, wait, hold on. Not that one, this one. There we go. So thanks so much, Terry. We really appreciate you doing that for us. Heather.
So to dive into this week's topic, under the larger umbrella of students as agents of diverse destiny, we're going to be talking about vulnerability and failure. For those who got a chance to listen to the podcast, we tried to make those links a little bit more apparent, but I wanted to start off our discussion about students as agents of their diverse destiny with posing everyone in this room some questions. So at the beginning, I just was thinking that diverse destiny means that students have ownership over their own path and how they get there. And for us in this room, we know that we have a lot of positions of power, whether that's faculty, staff, later stage grad students, et cetera. And there is a survivorship bias in academia. So how do we release the hold that traditional metrics of success in academia has over learning? And how do we shift the responsibility and power back to the student and give them ownership in that learning journey? So I'm just going to pose some questions, give you some chance to reflect on these. So reflecting on your practice. First, how often do you interact with students? Within that interaction, especially if that interaction centers learning, are these students given choice and agency in showing and demonstrating their learning? And how do we humanize our practice to ultimately serve our students better? So when we look at traditional pathways to success and what favors that, is that what's working for our students? How do we know? And again, how do we shift that power and responsibility back to the students within our own locus of control? And that's where I believe we jump into vulnerability and failure.
We chose the SpaceX shuttle to demonstrate that we can reach further and we can go further, but it also didn't get there without a lot of failure. So here is that image of all of the different times that failure occurred. So how does vulnerability and failure foster student agency in an online learning environment? This is really what we're going to be asking you to discuss in your breakout rooms. We've provided you with a few different artifacts in our podcast discussion, and we hope you had some time to look them over and think about them. But if not, that's okay. We still want to hear your thoughts and opinions. We believe that from vulnerability, we grow trust and personal connections with our students. The research shows, and according to Yair, it is these personal connections that lead to transformational learning moments. By allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and creating opportunities for students to be vulnerable, we foster a growth mindset. Duick in 2016 stated that a willingness to accept failure and mistakes as part of the learning process results in overall greater success. So there is value in attempting new teaching and learning methods, so much so that it outweighs the risk of making mistakes. One of my favorite quotes from the Trainwreck article that was co-authored by our own Pat Mayer is the Failing Well Certificate of Failure from Smith College. Bennett wrote it, and it reads, "You are hereby authorized to screw up, bomb, or fail at one or more relationships, hookups, friendships, texts, exams, extracurriculars, or any other choices associated with college, and still be totally worthy, utterly excellent humans." What if academics and students were given a permission slip to fail? Pat talks about taking that experience and learning from it, rather than turning it failed to I am a failure. We say that simply something that didn't work, I learned from it, and it's going to propel me forward. David Kelly, the CEO of IDEO, states that you fail faster to succeed sooner. So as you go into your breakout rooms, consider these questions. How do you see the relationship between vulnerability, failure, and student agency? Where has failure been an important learning opportunity for you or your students? And what does vulnerability mean in teaching and learning settings? What scares you most about vulnerability, failure, and student agency trinity? You'll find all of these questions in your shared documents as you go out into your breakout rooms. So we remind you to make sure that you take that opportunity to look at the links and pull them down. So I'm going to share the presentation with you again, as we're recycling the same presentation from Heather and Jess, or sorry, Dave and Jess. Heather, over to you.
And just a quick review, I think most folks on this call were here for our last session, or at least our first one. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I did post a link in the chat to our liberating structure for today. So as this is week one of our second module, we will be focusing on the what and the so what of the questions posed. Don't worry about remembering those, because when we send you into your breakout rooms, they will be there on a Google Doc for your individual rooms. And then we'll give you a week to ruminate and think upon that what and so what before going into now what next week. So today, try to keep your discussions focused on the what and the so what in order to participate in this liberating structure.
So we're going to move you into your breakout rooms. We really didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, so that's why we had given you the documents in advance. And we want to give you that opportunity to really collaborate with your colleagues. We just wanted you to remember that these are living documents. So go ahead and write in them and engage with the content, but please don't delete someone else's work or the work that comes before. So we're building on the notes from last week. So when you open up the document, you'll see that this week's information is on top, but if you scroll down, you'll have access to last week's notes on unlearning and unsettling. Notice who's volunteering to take notes. Consider how you can support them so that they can actively participate as well, so that everyone's voice can be heard. So we ask you just to remember to introduce yourselves. Ask what? What does it mean to be vulnerable, to fail but not be a failure? Then, after all of the salient observations have been collected, ask, so what? Why is being vulnerable important? For whom? For what outcome? How can we fail productively? Bring all of your diverse perspectives and experiences to the discussion, and remember to do it by creating a brave space. Remember, if at any time you don't feel safe, please return to the main room or leave the Zoom call and connect with your Humanizing team leader. We want to hear from you.